Uh, I want to take a moment before we begin, not as a formality, but because something about the way this particular community holds space for each other genuinely moves me every time I sit down to do this work. The honesty in the comments, the willingness to be seen in the middle of something difficult rather than only after it's resolved. That kind of mid process courage is not something I take for granted, and I don't want to move past it without naming it. You are real people carrying real things, and I'm grateful to be trusted with any part of that. Now, let me tell you what's coming for Virgo, because it arrived in this reading with the particular force of something that has been pressurized for a very long time and is finally about to find its release. There is a phenomenon in geology called a fault line slip. For years, sometimes decades, two tectonic plates press against each other in a state of locked tension. From the surface, nothing appears to be happening. The landscape above is calm, ordinary. People build lives on top of it: roads, houses, routines. The visible world gives no indication of the enormous, accumulated pressure working quietly beneath everything. Scientists can measure the stress building in the rock. They can model it. They can say with confidence that the release is coming, but the surface stays still. The ordinary continues. And then, in a matter of seconds, everything that was held releases at once, not gradually, not with warning that the ordinary mind can register. All at once, completely, with a force that is directly proportional to how long the pressure was contained and how much was suppressed in the holding. That is the energy I am sitting inside right now with your reading. Something has been held under the surface of your situation for a long time. Held by whom? Held how? Held at what cost to everyone involved? I'm going to get to all of that. But the holding is ending. The slip is imminent. And the truth that has been pressurized beneath the ordinary surface of what you've been told, what you've been shown, what you've been asked to accept as the version of events that truth is about to find the surface. I hope you're ready for it. That's not a warning. That's a genuine expression of care for what you're about to receive. Let me start where the fault line actually lives, because I want to be precise rather than atmospheric about this. There is something you have not been told, or something you have been told in a version so carefully edited, so selectively constructed, so shaped around what someone needed you to believe rather than what is actually true, that the version you have been operating from is, I'm going to say this plainly, not the full picture. This is not a comfortable thing to sit with. I'm aware of that. The recognition that the ground you've been standing on is not exactly the ground you thought it was, that something beneath your understanding of this situation is different from what has been presented, carries a particular quality of disorientation, even when part of you already suspected it, even when some layer of your perception has been quietly signaling for a while that something in the official version doesn't quite hold together. Virgo, you are not wrong to have felt that signal. That quiet, persistent, inconvenient feeling that something doesn't add up, that the story you've been given has a seam in it somewhere. A place where the pieces don't quite align. If you press on them directly, that feeling has not been paranoia. It has not been your analytical mind creating problems where none exist. It has been your extraordinarily accurate perception doing exactly what it always does, which is registering reality with a precision that outpaces your ability to consciously justify it. You have been right about something being off. What's coming is going to show you what. Let me look at where the truth is coming from, because I think the source matters as much as the content. What I'm perceiving is not a confession that has been planned or prepared. not someone who has decided carefully and strategically to come forward with something, who has rehearsed what they're going to say and how they're going to frame it and what they're going to ask of you in return. That kind of deliberate disclosure has a particular quality, managed, structured, arriving with its own agenda already built in. This is not that. What I feel instead is something closer to a rupture. The truth coming out not because someone chose to release it, but because the container holding it has finally, after a long time of being strained, given way. There's a difference between a door being opened and a wall coming down. One is a decision, the other is a consequence. What's approaching you is a consequence of sustained pressure, of something that could only be hidden for a certain amount of time before the hiding itself became impossible to maintain. This means the truth is going to arrive imperfectly, possibly not in the most organized form, possibly not with all the context you'd ideally want to have in advance, possibly in a moment or through a channel you weren't anticipating. The nature of something that breaks through rather than being deliberately released is that it doesn't wait for the right conditions. It arrives when the structural capacity to contain it has been exceeded. Be ready to receive something that might come sideways, that might come through a person you didn't expect, that might come in fragments rather than as a complete and tidy account. That might arrive in a conversation that wasn't supposed to be about this at all, and suddenly, irreversibly, is, hold on, something is sharpening and I want to stay with it. There's a specific person adjacent to this situation, not at the center of it, not the primary figure this reading is concerned with, but someone who knows something, who has known something for a while, who has been in the uncomfortable position of holding information that belongs to you and not knowing what to do with that responsibility, and whose discomfort with that position has been growing to the point where the passive holding of it is becoming its own ethical weight. That person is close to speaking. Maybe they've already been circling it. Maybe there have been moments in conversations with you where they came close to the edge of it and pulled back at the last second. Maybe you've sensed something in them, a slight hesitation, an almost said quality to certain moments without being able to name what was pressing underneath the surface. What has kept them quiet until now is not malice. What has kept them quiet is the complicated human calculus of loyalty and truth when those two things are pointed in different directions. They have felt allegiance pulling one way and honesty pulling another, and the tension between those two forces has been the silence you've been sitting in. The silence is breaking. I need to address the second part of this title now, the heart in it, the sense of loss embedded in what's coming, because I think it would be dishonest to frame this reading as only about revelation without naming the cost of it. The truth that's coming is not a simple truth. It is not the kind of truth that lands and immediately clarifies everything in a way that feels relieving and obvious and makes you wonder why it took so long. That kind of truth does exist, but that's not what I feel in this reading. What I feel is more complicated. A truth that resolves one uncertainty while opening another. A truth that makes certain things suddenly make sense. All those moments that seemed slightly off, all those seams you felt but couldn't press directly, all that quiet, persistent signal your body was sending that you kept trying to logic away while simultaneously requiring you to rearrange something significant in how you understand your situation. That rearrangement is where the heart lives, where the in this title is pointing, because the truth, when it comes, is going to ask something of you that goes beyond simply receiving information. It's going to ask you to update, to take what you believed was true and hold it alongside what you now know is true, and to find some way to integrate the gap between them, to mourn possibly the version of events you were operating from, not because that version was comfortable, but because even an imperfect version of reality is a home of sorts, and losing it, even when the replacement is more accurate, involves a grief. You are allowed to feel that grief. You are allowed to let this land as hard as it actually lands without immediately mobilizing toward what comes next. The productive processing, the clear-eyed assessment of what to do with what you now know that can wait. It will wait. The landing matters more than the recovery in the first moments. Let it land. I want to talk about what this truth does not mean, because I think in the aftermath of revelation, there is a particular Virgo tendency I want to get ahead of. When something you didn't know comes to light, when a piece of your reality is revealed to have been incomplete or constructed or simply wrong, there is an almost reflexive movement in you toward self-examination, toward the question of what you missed and why you missed it, and whether a different version of you, a more perceptive or less trusting or more rigorously questioning version, would have seen through it sooner. I am asking you, when this comes, to resist that movement. Not permanently, not because self-examination is wrong or useless, but because in the immediate aftermath of a truth arriving that cost you something, the self-examination is almost never fair. It applies the knowledge you now have to the conditions that existed before you had it, and judges the decisions you made in those prior conditions by a standard they couldn't have met. That's not honest accounting. That's retrospective blame wearing the costume of rigor. You could not have known what you didn't know. You made the decisions available to you with the information available to you. That is the only standard by which those decisions can be fairly assessed, and by that standard, you did not fail. What failed was someone else's willingness to be honest with you. That failure belongs to them, not to your perception, not to your judgment, not to the part of you that trusted in good faith something that turned out to deserve a different kind of scrutiny. The person who chose to present you with an incomplete or constructed version of reality owns that choice and its consequences. You are not responsible for having believed them. Let that sit. Really let it sit. There is something in the reading that keeps pressing at me from a direction I haven't fully addressed yet, and I want to go there now because I think it might be the most important thing I say in this entire reading. You are stronger than what's coming. Not in the sense that it won't affect you, not in the performative sense of being above it or unbothered by it or able to process it with some preternatural equanimity that most humans don't actually possess, in the specific structural sense that you have the interior resources to absorb this and remain fundamentally intact, to be changed by it because it will change you without being destroyed by it. I feel that about you with an unusual certainty. There's something in the particular quality of how you've been moving through this period, the combination of precision and tenderness, the refusal to simplify what is genuinely complex, the sustained presence you've maintained with your own feelings without either drowning in them or cutting them off. That tells me something about what you're made of. You've been preparing for this without knowing that's what you were doing. Every time you held something uncomfortable rather than putting it somewhere easier. Every time you chose to stay honest with yourself, even when a more flattering version of events was available. Every time your perception registered something difficult and you let yourself actually feel the difficulty of it rather than dismissing it or explaining it away, all of that was preparation, structural preparation. The kind that doesn't announce itself as useful until the moment it's needed. The moment is coming, and what you've built in yourself is going to hold. Let me say something about the word finally in this title, because it is doing something in the reading that I don't want to pass over. Finally implies duration. It implies a wait. It implies that this truth arriving now is not early, is not sudden in the sense of being unexpected at some deep level, but is the end of a process that has been running longer than was comfortable. That the delay was part of the experience, that what arrives is arriving after something, after a period of sensing without confirming, of knowing without knowing, of living in the gap between what was presented and what was true. You've been in that gap, and the finally carries real emotional weight because of it. Not just the content of the truth, but the end of the uncertainty. The end of the particular exhaustion of holding two contradictory realities simultaneously, the official version and the version your perception kept insisting on, and not being able to close the gap between them yourself. The gap is about to close. Not comfortably, not cleanly, but finally, honestly, with the actual ground under your feet rather than the constructed version of it. And however disorienting that transition is, and it may be significantly disorienting, at least for a time, there is something on the other side of it that is worth more than the false comfort of not knowing. That something is solid ground, real ground, ground that holds your weight because it's actually there, not because you've been carefully avoiding the places where it isn't. You can build on real ground. You can know where you stand. You can stop spending the enormous unconscious energy that goes into maintaining orientation in a landscape that keeps shifting beneath your feet. That energy is coming back to you. When the truth lands, when the fault line slips and the long tension releases and the actual topography of your situation becomes visible, you are going to feel underneath whatever else you feel a quality of solidity that has been missing for a long time. It is going to feel like, finally, one more thing, and I want to say it without dressing it up. There are people in your life who have been watching this situation and who have had their own feelings about it. Some of them are going to have something to say when the truth comes out. Not all of those things are going to be helpful. Some of them are going to want to tell you what it means or what you should do or how you should feel about it, and they're going to want to do that before you've had adequate time to simply be with what's happened. You do not owe anyone your processing in real time. You are allowed to receive this, to feel it, to hold it quietly for however long you need to hold it before you make it available for other people's interpretation. The truth belongs to you first. The response to the truth belongs to you first. Whatever you decide to do with what you learn, and there will be decisions, practical and emotional and relational decisions that emerge from this. Those decisions have the right to develop in the space of your own clarity before they become anyone else's conversation. Protect that space. Claim it. It's yours. The truth is coming. You have been sensing it for longer than you should have had to. You have been patient with an incomplete picture, with more grace than the situation deserved. And what you're about to find out, however it arrives, through whatever crack in the surface, from whatever direction, is going to give you something you have earned through all of that patience. Your own clear sight. Finally. And actually, your own clear sight. What I want to hear in the comments today is something specific, and I'm asking you to be honest about it. That signal I described, the persistent, inconvenient feeling that something in the version you've been given doesn't quite hold together. The seam you can feel but not see, has that been present for you? Not generally, but about a specific situation, a specific person, a specific story you've been told that has required more effort to believe than the truth should require. Tell me. And if you already know somewhere in your body, if not yet in your mind, what the truth that's coming is, tell me that too. Not the details, just whether you already know, whether you've been waiting for the confirmation of something you've already sensed. I want to hear how many of you are in that waiting room right now.